Hi, this is Emily of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Bobby Womack has saved the USA's life in this World Cup. Hall, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people,
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
you may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
And a happy Friday to you, Matt Coyne, alongside Jake Holmes. Jake, I'm sorry that I pulled a Steelers before we even got on the air this morning, but it's technology. You know, how you doing this morning?
You know what? I'm doing well. I'm glad that we got, a little bit of technical issue, but I mean, it's all good. We're here talking sports now, and we're all ready to go. I'm doing well. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. I was doing really well. And I tell you, technology can just really get you going and really put the whole day off. Jeez.
You aren't wrong.
Well, Jake, this past week, before we begin, again, normally we get excited to get into it, but now I'm all worked up. But before we get into it, I want to remind you all that we are presented by Squadcast.fm here on the Public House Media. You can listen to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. Learn more about us at thephmedia.com. You can like us on our Facebook page and then see our daily poll question on the Cheap Seats Facebook page as well. And then don't forget to join our Pick'em League as well. You can find more out about that on the Cheap Seats Facebook page. When you go to answer your poll question from today's show, as well as just check out previous shows as well. As always, we come out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. We got Christian and Jonathan on Mondays. We've got Tanner and Max on Wednesdays. And then on Fridays, as always, you got Jake Holmes and Matt Coyne. So, Jake, this past week, it started up. Hockey. It's how do you feel? How was your first few days of hockey?
Man, I tell you, especially last night. Last night, of course, you had the game start out on Wednesday. You had four good. I mean, the one was two high quality teams with the Capitals and the Bruins. And then the Capitals look real good, man. I like them or hate, love them or hate them, man. I mean, the Capitals look really good. I mean, 10 goals over their first 4 periods of action. Really, really coming out of the gates hot offensively. The other games were just okay. I mean, San Jose, I was surprised that San Jose looked as poor as they did. But, man, I got to see that power play of Carlson and Burns at the point with Pavelski, Thornton, and Logan Couture. My goodness, that team's going to be good. Just because they lost opening night against the Ducks doesn't mean anything. The Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, last night, same deal. I mean, they just struggled defensively. I mean, and Matt Murray did not look good. But the nice thing, if you're a Penguin fan, the nice thing is that there's another 81 games for them to fix that, and they're going to, because I'm convinced that this is the best Pittsburgh Penguin roster probably since 2013, and you and I both know how 2013 ended up.
Exactly, yeah.
A sweep of to the hands of the Boston Bruins in the Eastern Conference Final. Boy, oh boy, what a brutal series. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the most talented team from top to bottom that the Penguins have had since 2013. They're going to figure it out. They're going to be just fine. Even though, despite, whatever outcome from last night, whether it be a win or a loss from last night, they still looked really good offensively, and the best offense comes from a good defense. So the fact that they just played such a good offensive game last night, they're only going to get better.
Yeah. Jake, how do you feel about the Tom Wilson suspension? 20 games. Yeah, I mean, if we have new listeners, in here, how my opinions
Both
of
Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what team he plays for. He could play for, the Calgary Flames. The guy's a chump. The guy's an absolute chump. He's a joke. He's a disgrace to the NHL. He should, in the fact that he did that in a preseason game. My God, what a pathetic human being. I mean, come on. And that's Oscar Sundqvist. He's fighting for an NHL job. Give me a break, dude. Like, no, 20 games to me isn't enough. He's a disgrace to the league, and I think that a quarter of the season isn't even close to enough. I mean, this guy does this every game. No, I'm glad that the NHL finally did something big, though. Well, as opposed to like a 3 or 4.
And I know, like, his teammates were, that hit was just as bad as any other hit. But I think what the NHL is trying to say is, dude, stop it. We've given you suspension after suspension. We've kind of given you breaks, and that's enough. 20 games. I agree with you. I think now, obviously, he will. Did he appeal it? I know he'd appealed it, but have we heard back yet? If anything,
he lost. He's out for.
He did lose. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I actually have a hot take about this most recent Tom Wilson debacle. I think that this is 10 times worse of a hit than what he laid on Zach Aston Reese, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. They were facing each other. I mean, Zach Aston Reese was skating towards Tom Wilson. I mean, he was a defenseless player, but he was still skating towards him. Oscar Sundqvist was in no man's land, and Tom Wilson just comes out of nowhere. I mean, you get you have 7 to 10 years in prison for doing that on the street. I mean, 20 games. I mean, it's what the NHL is going to give him. But the fact that the thing that's frustrating to me is that Nate Schmidt got 20 games for accidentally using not steroids, not anything. It's a drug it's a banned substance. He got 20 games for that. And Tom Wilson just keeps trying to end players' careers, and he's getting 20 games. So that's just where the inconsistency with the NHL is. And I mean, the old dinosaurs in the front office and management in the NHL, they need just a complete reboot. And the fact their commissioner doesn't believe in CTE. I mean, come on.
I'm glad he's off the ice though for 20 games. It's hopefully it'll help him out. So it won't. What am I saying? He is who he is. But make sure Jake and we are going to actually jump over into baseball when we come back. Talk about the playoffs starting up this past week, and we're going to give you a little bit about our take and how we feel about the best record in the NL, not even making it to an NLDS. So stay with Jake and Matt here in the Cheap Seats. We'll be back soon.
But first, let me take a selfie.
And welcome back to the Cheap Seats. Matt Coyne, Jake Holmes. Jake, well, we've talked about this. Baseball, October baseball is one of my favorite times of the year, one of my favorite things to watch. And this past week we had, I know the other shows have been talking about it as well, but we saw a two-way tiebreaker, or two tiebreakers, which was just awesome that 162 games wasn't enough for the Brewers and Cubs and Dodgers and Rockies. So we saw a one-game playoff there, which, Jake, just give me your take real quick. Do you think there's a better way to do that in baseball than to make 162 games come down to one, or do you like that?
Okay, so I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Okay.
Because I just find it so tough, especially in game 163 scenarios.
Yes.
You're asking for, and I mean, this was a little bit different because this isn't necessarily to get in the playoffs. This was for seeding. So I mean, you still don't want that one game wild card. Yeah, either way, but you still want to avoid that one game wild card at all costs. But I mean, essentially, you have 2 1-game wild cards. So I mean, of course, for the loser of that first game. So I mean, it's tough. I don't know how I feel about it, man. Honestly, I mean, I want to say, like, especially the wild card to go to a 3-game series, but then I watched Tuesday night, and I watched that Rockies-Cubs game, and man, that's what that wild card game is supposed to be.
Yeah,
that is what it's supposed to be. Freeland pitched his butt off. Lester pitched well. That was just a hardcore pitcher's duel between 2 of the National League's best. What a game. And, I mean, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. I mean, the A's, I don't think the A's, are in the same – the A's are a fine team, but, I mean, the Yankees are a better team. So Wednesday justice was served. But, I mean – I don't know, man. That 163 is strange to me, but I think that it's fun. I think that just having one game, especially in that scenario where either team makes the playoffs, have one game to determine the seeding, I think is fun.
Yeah, it's unique. I mean, and I think baseball brings a lot of that to the sporting world. But I guess here's my thing, Jake. I feel like here's the way I look at it with the tiebreaker I'm talking about, game 163, where you play 162 games. Let's take Brewers Cubs. They played each other 18 times in the season. I think that's what they play their division opponent.
Yeah.
So 18 times. What I don't understand is you do the whole playoffs best out of 5, best out of 7. Why don't you just go with the season, whoever won the most games head to head, instead of playing another one? And if it is a tie, so if it's 9-9, then you play 163. But I feel like you don't go past, like, in football, there's like 12 tiebreakers and they go to a coin flip. I don't think it needs.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that. I think it's one tiebreaker. You have the 18 games. If it's tied, then yes, you play game 163. But if it's not, if the Cubs, I think the Cubs were up on the season series. I think it was like 10-8, something like that. I think the Cubs should have went to the wild card game that the Cubs should have won the division.
Yeah, I like the regular season. I like the regular season, aspect to it. I think like having the, whoever wins more, of course, who has the better head-to-head record. In the regular season, I like that idea. That's how it is that's how it is for every other sport. Mm-hmm. The thing with baseball is that does make it unique, and they do have that 1-game wild card, which, on top of that, so that's unique in of itself. So. Yeah.
And like you said, it's a love-hate relationship. Obviously, we loved it in 13, and we hated it in 14 and 15.
Yeah, and what's funny, Matt, is I was thinking about that because I was like, gosh, wouldn't it be nice for the Pirates to be in here? Us chanting Cueto and stuff from our living rooms. Of course, you and I be in the living room, but the thing with all of those games that the Pirates were in 2013 through 2015, none of them were like that Rockies, and none of them were like that Rockies. And Cubs game. It's just like none of them were close. The Cubs and the Giants absolutely rocked the Pirates. The Pirates rocked the Reds. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm going to use a different term. The Pirates beat the Reds. I don't want to use the word. I don't want. That's not a phrase. We were talking about hockey about 5 minutes ago. I don't want to use the word rock the Red. But I've had enough of that. But yeah, so 2 completely different games, and I'm telling you that, like I said earlier, that 1-game wild card between the National League wild card game between the Rockies and Cubs. That's what that game is supposed to be all about.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it was a great game to watch. Obviously, I was pulling for the Brewers. One, because I picked them to win the division. I feel like not too many people picked them. And somebody asked me the other day, Jake, why did I pick the Brewers? And I said, I really don't know. I just felt like they had a good team, and I actually said if they get to the trade deadline, first, second, and they make some moves, that there's no reason why they can't beat the Cubs, and that's what happened. So moving forward, we have Rockies, Brewers, Braves, Dodgers in the NL, and then we have in the AL we have Yankees, Red Sox, which is crazy, and then Indians, Astros. So Jake, tell me if you disagree with this, but I think in the NL it's really anybody's game. I think any of those four teams remaining have a chance. I don't really think it's cut and dry. I think if you would have asked both of us, I think at the trade deadline, I think we both said the Dodgers are probably going to be the team to beat, and I don't think that's the case.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at those four teams remaining. I mean, the Braves, of course, are such a great story because they're a couple years ahead of schedule. Mm-hmm. The Braves are here to stay. I mean, that's going to be a really fine team. That's a really fine team this year, but I mean, also moving forward. Of course, the Rockies are just playing fantastic baseball at the right time. I mean, you and I 2 weeks ago had them pretty much dead to rights, and as far as winning that division's concerned, and they forced that 1-game playoff. They're playing fantastic baseball at the right time. The Brewers are great. I think that they have the National League MVP in Christian Yelich, and of course the Dodgers. I mean, that roster is really good. Mm-hmm. Of course they added Machado at the deadline, and that's what would make us say it, but that they were the favorite. But man, in the National League, it's anybody's game. I mean, who would you say if you were to make like a prediction? Like, who would you say? Would you take the Brewers?
It's funny. I would take Brewers or Rockies, and of course they're playing each other, so I can't take both. I would.
The game last night.
Yeah, I mean, and then another extra inning game, and the Brewers. I think they are the team to beat. I think, like you said, both teams are playing hot, but I think the Brewers are the more talented team who's on a hot streak right now. You got Christian Yelich, who's playing awesome. You got Lorenzo Cain, who's who hit the go-ahead run against the Cubs. They have such a potent offense right now that I really think that they, in my opinion, they're the team to beat in the NL.
Yeah, and Josh Hader too. I have a hard time rooting for the guy after the stuff that came out about him, in July. But man, I mean, he's looked crazy, all season. And last night, of course, was no exception in Game 1. It's almost unfair. I mean, the Brewers. I agree. If I was to put a team at the beginning of the playoffs, on Tuesday afternoon, if you would ask me, I would have said the Cubs. Mm-hmm. But now, I mean, I think you got to pick the Brewers. I mean, as far as all that's concerned, I mean, the Brewers look really good.
Yeah. Hashtag Brew Crew. Here we go.
Brew
See
Crew.
What happens. Yeah. That's what I heard some people talking the other day, to go down to Milwaukee and tickets were $150 each just for standing. I was like, nope.
My goodness, yeah.
So, well, real quick, let's go to the AL. I think, like I said, we got Yankees, Red Sox, Indians, Astros. I think we know Red Sox is the team to beat here. But, Jake, do you give the Yankees a shot?
Oh, absolutely. That offense, it's the most powerful offense of all time. I mean, statistically, they broke the record last Saturday, almost a week ago.
Correct.
So I mean, yeah, of course, with that offense, I mean, anything's possible. Severino looked really good too on Wednesday. Severino looked real good, and Dylan Betances looked really good coming out of the pen too. That team, I mean, pitching of course is the question mark with the Yankees. But I mean, they're going to be able to score a lot of runs, and that's the case with the Red Sox too. I mean, their pitching's great, but what does it for them is their offense. So I mean, that's going to be a really fun series, and it's always fun whenever those two teams collide.
Yeah. So I mean, it's, again, like we said, NL. I think it's anybody's. AL, obviously, Red Sox are team to beat, but we're not. We're going to leave it at that this week for baseball. We'll talk more about it next week, but Jake and I are excited. We'll see what happens. But when we come back, we're going to jump over to football. Jake and I, we we get a little upset, not with each other, but with a certain team. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this upcoming weekend when we come back. And welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on this Friday edition of the Cheap Seats. Jake Holmes, Matt Coyne. Jake, the technology got me already in a tissy. That's right. I said tissy. That's right. And the Steelers, if you've listened to us, you know that we're going to talk about the dumpster fire that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And yes, you're going to probably also say, if you're listening, last week that we were just talking about that there was a glimmer of hope, but they lost. So, of course, we're going to say that now they're a dumpster fire. But this past week, as we all know, the Pittsburgh Steelers fell to the Baltimore Ravens 26-14. But we're not going to live too much in the past, but it was a bad weekend for Jake and myself, seeing the Steelers go down and seeing Penn State go down.
Okay, that's where I have to cut you off. I'm done. Pour one out for my happiness. R.I.P. I'm done. I retire.
So we're not going to live too much in the past, but what a tough weekend. Jake, I was telling somebody I'm in 2 fantasy leagues. I'm in one that I've been in for about 20 years, and I'm in another one that I do with a friend of mine from Pennsylvania that we just kind of just to stay in touch. And it seems like this is crazy, Jake. I am 3-1 this year in both of my leagues. And the Steelers, let's be honest, they're 1-3. Let's count the tie as a loss. And I win on the weeks that they lose, and I lose on the weeks that they win. And I feel like it's been like that for years. I bet if you go back, now the Steelers don't have a winning season, so I guess that's not true because I don't have losing seasons every year. I'm not good at it, but I don't have losing seasons every year. But it just feels like I would rather lose and have the Steelers win, and that's just not happening this year. But Jake, with all that aside, rumors are Le'Veon Bell is coming back on the bye week. 1, do you think that's true? And 2, do you really think he's going to be able to help the Steelers?
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Mm-hmm. He told everyone he was coming back week 1. You know, and also, it wasn't that long ago where he tweeted out and he said, Steeler Nation, 2018 is going to be my best year. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't believe a word that comes out of the dude's face. And as far as helping the team, maybe by week 10, but by that time, I think it's going to be too late.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be too late. That team's bad, and even with Le'Veon Bell, Matt, you watch that team, they stink.
And Jake, here's the thing: what changed? I don't understand why they're bad. They have pretty much the same team minus Le'Veon Bell, and I think that he is making a big impact, obviously on the negative side. But I don't understand what really changed. Why now? I know, players have off years. I know obviously Antonio Brown's not having a good year, but I don't want to put it all on him. But I just don't understand.
Well, the thing with me is that I don't think the offense in the second half on Sunday night looked real bad.
Yeah.
But that defense is just it's so my brother-in-law is he's been watching football his whole life. He's about 40. He's about 40 years old. Sorry, Sean, for announcing that. But
we'll dub it out.
I said the other night, I'm not being dramatic. This is the worst Steeler defense of all time. And I said, I'm not being dramatic. I think that this is the worst Steeler defense of all time. And he said that he agreed.
Yeah.
It's not because, as Pittsburgh fans, we are automatic. We have it engraved into our minds that we're supposed to be negative about everything. This isn't a Pittsburgh fandom thing. That defense stinks. They're terrible. Artie Burns is garbage. Bud Dupree's terrible. They have 3 players on that defense that I think would start on other teams. Like Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Stephen Tuitt. Stephen Tuitt's really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Other than that, I don't think any of them are starters on another team. They're terrible.
We need Will Gay back. I'm kidding. and I'll be honest with you, Jake, I think a big thing is the flags. I know they didn't have a crazy amount of flags this past week, but they're killing them. I feel like they're the most, penalized team, at least going into last week. I don't know if they still are, but well, let's take a quick run through the standings. We're 4 weeks in. We're a quarter of the way in the season, which is crazy. But you got the Miami Dolphins in first place in the East. The Patriots. It looks like the Patriots. This isn't their. Oh wait, that's right. They destroyed the Dolphins like you, Keith, and I thought they would. You have in the North. Who knows what's going to happen here? There's no way the Bengals are going to win this division. There's just no way. Then you got Tennessee and Jacksonville at 3-1. You got the Chiefs with Mahomes playing out of his mind. They're at 4-0. And then the East, there's you got the Redskins, you got the Bears leading their division, the Saints leading their division, and the Rams at 4-0. So there's just a real quick run through. But Jake, let's talk about the upcoming weekend. That's what we like to talk about because that's here in just 2 days. So this weekend, any game excites you this weekend? Let me actually give you one for me first that I'm actually looking forward to, and that's Minnesota and Philadelphia. I think that is Philadelphia. I don't know what's going on with them this year. They are not. Question for you: do you think it was a mistake that Carson Wentz replaced Nick Foles with the way that Nick Foles was playing?
No, because I don't think Foles necessarily looked all that great when he was in. Mm-hmm. So no, I mean, I have no problem with them rushing back Wentz. I just look at that team. I mean, they have some injury issues. I mean, of course, Ajayi missed a little bit of time. Alshon Jeffrey, of course, missed a little bit of time. I mean, they have some injury issues. I mean, but that game is very intriguing. That was one that I was going to pick. There's a couple really good games this week.
Yeah,
that Minnesota Philadelphia games are not a must win. I don't call Week 5 games a must win, but I mean that's an important one.
Yeah,
that's an important one. Both of those teams sitting at 2-2.
Yeah, and you got Jacksonville and Kansas City, which I mean you got an insane defense against an insane offense right now. So. I mean, those two teams going up against each other. And, like you said, you hate to say must win, but, you got Atlanta and Pittsburgh against each other. And I don't know, Jake. I feel like that's a must win for both of them.
Gosh, how bad is that going to be? I mean, first one to 95 points is going to win that one, I think.
Well, and that's the thing. Atlanta, I think these are two surprising teams. I mean, again, Pittsburgh's 1-2-1, so you can't say 1-3, but they're 1-3 teams that I think people thought they would be 3-1 right now. And I think that, I mean, you got to think one of those teams loses, they're going to 1-4, and they're going to be 3 games out of first place in early October.
Yeah, I mean here's the thing. I mean the Falcons. I mean I guess the Falcons. You never make an excuse, but I mean, you talk about a team that's decimated by injuries. It's the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, their entire secondary is either their second or third option, along with Devontae Freeman, who's been out for most of the year. So I mean, they have an excuse to be bad. I mean, the Steelers are just bad. I mean, that's just all there is to it. The Steelers are just bad. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, both of those teams, I expected this to be 3-1, 4-0 matchup. I mean, coming in, I expected this to be, maybe one of those games that they bumped to the late slot. It's just another 1:00 in the afternoon game between these two teams. But I mean, it's very important for both of them, considering where they are in the division. I mean, the teams that are surprising in those divisions. I mean, I didn't expect Cincinnati to be at 3-1. I didn't really expect Baltimore to be at 3-1, and of course, Tampa Bay, it's sitting at 2-2. It's still ahead of the Atlanta Falcons. So very important game for both teams.
So speaking of surprises, what is your biggest, doesn't have to be team, it can be something. What is the biggest thing that has surprised you so far a quarter of the way into the season?
Oh, the Chicago Bears, man.
Yeah.
Trubisky looks like a Trubisky's out here looking like John Elway. I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy. Trubisky looks like a beast. Six touchdowns in the first half last week against Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Mitch Trubisky, I mean, in the Chicago Bears, man, I was wrong about them. That adding Khalil Mack, I think that brought a little bit of, an extra spark, like, hey, man, that organization saying, hey, man, we can win now. And they are. I mean, how long that lasts, I'm not sure. But, I mean, at least so far, the Chicago Bears look like one of the best teams in the NFL, in my opinion.
Well, it's crazy, too, because all year, I mean, go back and what we talked about when we went through, it was I picked the Vikings, I picked the Packers, you picked the Vikings. I think that's how it went. Yeah. It was everybody who's going to win this North, Packers, Vikings, and all of a sudden the Bears quietly sneak into now who's going to win this division, Bears, Packers, or Vikings.
Yeah, and I mean, Matt Patricia's just there with his pencil behind his ear, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm not quite sure. One day we'll get there, but yeah,
he beat the Patriots, so
he did. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was. Oh man, I loved watching that game. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Bears are in this thing. I mean, whenever you look at it, they're still a little bit raw on the perimeter. I mean, they don't have great targets for Mitch Trubisky, but I mean, they have that run game to complement. I mean, Tariq Cohen is just unbelievable, and the change of pace scenario and on special teams is a guy that you can use in so many different ways. And of course Jordan Howard, which I think is one of the more underrated backs in the league. So yeah, I mean, the Bears are there. The Bears are there. They're a heck of a team. Yeah,
I agree. It'll be fun to see what ends up. I mean, every year you do this. There's those teams that you don't expect who come out of nowhere, and Khalil Mack. I think so many people were saying. You were saying somebody said that nobody's worth two first round draft picks, a first round draft pick. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that, but now I'm looking at him like the Bears knew something, because he's not only just being a good player, he's having an MVP season right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that he's defensive player of the year already.
Yeah,
I mean, they could just give it to him already. But yeah, I mean, it's not just defensive player of the year. I mean, we're talking MVP like season. I mean, of course, Pat Mahomes is looking absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
another surprise. But I mean, people have talked so much about him. I'm not gonna do it as well.
It was funny because I was going to say that as my surprise. I'm like, everybody's talking about that. That's just a normal surprise. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens this weekend. And it'll be it's NFL, no matter how bad the Steelers are. It's always fun to watch. But anyways, when we come back, we're going to be joined by Keith Hoehne. And he is not going to tell us how last weekend went, because we don't care. No, just kidding. We'll get his input, but we'll also hear some more from him, as well as get his predictions. So stay with Jake and myself, Matt, here in the Cheap Seats. And welcome back to the Cheap Seats. It is our favorite segment of the show. Keith Hoehne joins us. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm your favorite segment?
It's turned into my favorite segment. I don't know about Jake, but I'm going to tell you it's my favorite segment now.
I'm having a good time listening. Yeah, I'm having a good time.
Well, I'm honored. I'm doing well, guys. How are you guys doing?
We're doing all right. So, well, it might be our favorite segment. We'll see what happens here today. We're not going to talk about last weekend, Keith. We're just going to go right into next weekend. No, just
we got to talk about it a little bit, right?
All right. So, for new listeners out there, Keith Hoehne joins us. This is our 5th week, I believe now. Keith is blessed with the opportunity to travel to different cities throughout the football season, both NFL and NCAA. And this past week, Keith, you were in my hometown and Jake's hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to watch the dumpster fire of the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Baltimore Ravens. So first we're going to ask you, like we do every week, first impressions. I know you said you've been to Pittsburgh, but first impressions of Pittsburgh.
Well, I really appreciated the fans, and the one thing that I really found, really nice about Pittsburgh and the fans there is one of the things that I do when I'm on location is that I'm on a microphone and I kind of serve as an MC, and I try to get the crowd riled up and I try to get some fan reaction. And in some places, especially, you guys will be happy to hear this, New England, I didn't have a lot of fan interaction, but every time I was like, where are my Pittsburgh fans out there, or this or that, and I always got a really big reaction out of that.
Good.
So that was really cool. I did want to let you guys know that I attempted to go to Purgatory, as you guys suggested last week. However, when I got there, they said it was about an hour and 20, hour and a half wait, and I just could not do that.
Yeah, that's a long wait. Ooh. Well,
but I did make the attempt. I wanted to let you guys know.
Well, good.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for trying at least. As you can see, it's a very it's turned into a popular place. It's a newer place, but it picked up popularity pretty quick.
Well, I heard they have a I saw that they had a location in one of the end zones there.
Yes.
At Heinz Field. By the way, when I got inside, we had seats in row KK. The second to the last row on the very top there, and it's a steep stadium.
Yeah,
like
brutal.
some stadiums, that the seats go a little more out and it's a little more spread out, but that is a high seat up there, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I sat up there one time, and I just remember I was actually like scared at one point. I'm like, if I like lean over too far, I'm just going to keep going.
Oh, it's over. Yeah.
so
kind of like the Steelers season.
All right, we'll talk to you later. So Keith, how was the tail? So you said the fans were great, which is very good to hear. But how was tailgating? Anything specific that you saw? Did you see a lot of pierogies? Anything special?
I was really close to the stadium. I was like immediately right outside the doors there, so we were kind of more in the fan fest and not the real individual tailgate scene. But the crowd really stuck around, and we were there, and we had a huge crowd where we were, and we were about 50 yards away from their main stage. I think that was presented by Pepsi or something. And the one thing that I noticed and that I kind of touched on earlier is that a lot of fan interaction, a lot of fans that were very friendly and willing to interact with everybody, which made the atmosphere really great. However, I'm going to call out the Pittsburgh fans here for a second, because when I got inside the stadium, I noticed a lot of yellow seats there. And when they announced the attendance at 62,000, knowing that Heinz Field holds about 68,000,
really,
I gotta wonder, where the heck were the Pittsburgh fans on Sunday Night Football versus the Baltimore Ravens?
That is
6,000 empty seats.
Yeah, that's shocking to me. I mean, especially.
Yeah, I'm very surprised. Yeah.
But
they're probably all.
Besides that, I thought that the atmosphere outside of Heinz Field was great, and the stadium itself was my first time ever inside the stadium. I really like the way that it's laid out, and I thought that it was a great atmosphere.
Cool. So the game itself, seeing the second coming of the Steel Curtain, the best defense in the NFL.
The shower curtain.
That's a good one. How was the game itself? What was some takeaways from it?
Well, I think we all saw the game, and Pittsburgh had a great they had a pretty good first half, and Roethlisberger, he had an outstanding first half. He had, like 224 yards passing, and like 19 for 29. He had with a very impressive catch by Antonio Brown there, but just non-existent the entire second half.
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to you guys at halftime? And so we all saw the ending of that, and Baltimore taking over, and really time-consuming drives was just drains your defense and keeps your offense on the bench and cold. So it's just a disastrous second half for Pittsburgh, as I think we all know.
Yeah. How were the fans when it started getting out of? I'll be honest, I couldn't really hear too much on the TV, but was there a good bit of booing? That's always interests me at the home. home fields.
I heard a lot of booing, not so much towards Pittsburgh. It was a lot more negative booing towards Baltimore. But from what I experienced, it didn't seem like there were a lot of fans turning on the Steelers. It was more, to me, it seemed like more groans and like, what are you guys doing, rather than, flat out turning and booing on your own guys.
Yeah. Jake, what do you have for Keith?
Yeah, I mean, I was intrigued too, because I'm obviously not I'm not in Pittsburgh anymore, but I was just wondering, like, overall in the city, like, Matt, you asked about like animosity towards the team. Is there anything, like, what's the city feel, or if anything? I don't know if you caught on to anything, Keith. What's the feeling around Le'Veon Bell? As far as like the majority in the city, or it didn't it seem like anything?
It's kind of funny when I'm on the mic. I kind of like to the jab to home fans a little bit, just to get some good interaction going and to get some people into it. So when I was on the mic outside the stadium, I was, cracking jokes. And I said, well, guys, breaking news out of Pittsburgh. The Steelers have just traded Le'Veon Bell to the Ravens, effective in an hour and a half. And people were, some people were laughing, and I heard a lot of, good, you can have them, too selfish to be here and everything. Yeah. So that seemed to be and I cracked the joke a couple times throughout the afternoon leading up to the game as I got a newer crowd in there. So the general consensus seemed to be that, he doesn't want to be here, so we don't want him here. Yeah. I think, for every fan base, they'll change their tune if they finally get their outstanding running back and he scores a couple of touchdowns for them. But, as long as he's not there, it seems like the Steeler fans, probably in a very bitter way are like, fine, we don't want him here anyways.
Yeah, it seems that way. And talking to people from back home, I don't know of anybody who really wants him. I think we can all agree, between us three, being just logical people, that Bell's it's killing them not having him. I think that they would have a better record with him. I think Cleveland would have looked different. I think maybe even Tampa Bay would have looked different. But with that said, it's 1-2-1 is not looking good. But Keith, are the Ravens legit? Do you think that? Do you think they're? Do you buy them at 3-1?
Well, yeah, I'm 3-1, and I don't think that the Steelers are as I don't think they're as bad as 1-2-1. Maybe they are. But it's obviously a team that's struggling, and any team is going to struggle when you don't have, when your offense that's two-dimensional with, with a, still a good quarterback with arguably the best wide receiver in the league and arguably the best running back in the league. We all saw it with the Packers last year, right? They lose Aaron Rodgers, and they fall apart to a certain extent, and any team is going to definitely experience that in the first couple of weeks when you're missing your guy. So I don't think the Steelers are, as bad as they appear, but you know what? The Ravens, they just aren't too bad. And, they, whether you have Le'Veon Bell or not, to be able to, really shut down Roethlisberger and the best receiver in the league, that still takes, some impressive playing. And, Flacco always seems to play well when his back is against the wall, or when he really needs a new contract for a bunch of bucks. So that seems to be when he plays the best. So I really think that Baltimore is for real now at 3-1, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that they're a pretty good team.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you don't get 3-1, and even with how bad the Steelers are playing, come into Heinz Field and take care of business. But this upcoming week, if I remember right, Keith, you're going back to college ball. You want to tell us a little bit about where you're going and what you're looking forward to?
Yeah, well, no more NFL games for the rest of the year. It's all college, and I completed my journey from Pittsburgh down to Miami. where the Florida State Seminoles are going to be playing the Miami Hurricanes on Saturday. Really looking forward to that. It's a similar situation as I told you guys in Pittsburgh. I've been to what I think it's the Hard Rock Stadium, whatever it is, but I haven't seen a game there yet. I'm really excited to see what the fan interaction is going to be like in Miami, because the stadium there is like 30 miles away from campus, and it's really a hike for students to get there. So I'll be excited to see what the student section is like and what the fans are like there. But it's a down and out Florida State team against a pretty decent Miami team. But I'm still expecting a good atmosphere for that rivalry.
Jake, you curious about anything down in Miami?
Yeah, I'm really anxious to see if they because last year the U it felt like they weren't back, but they were at least coming back. I want to know if that environment is if that's like the environment, if that's the mentality, is the U back? Do they feel like they have a good thing going under Mark Richt? So basically, that's what I'd be certainly looking forward to. If I was down there, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with with Florida State really not being a good team. Now Miami's a pretty good team, I think. Now their only loss came to embarrassing fashion to LSU, but LSU is ranked number 5 right now. So I think LSU is a lot better than we all thought that they might be with Ed Orgeron. So with Miami coming in with a good record, looking like a pretty solid team against the weak Florida State team, but yet still a very, very popular rivalry. Hopefully the fans will be out in force, and we'll see how the Hurricanes, go into this game at home against a big rival. It's a game that I have tickets for and that I'm going to be able to get in and see a little bit. So that atmosphere inside the stadium is something that I really can't wait to experience.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear back from you, because Miami, as we all know, they've always been relevant. Not the last few years, obviously, but having them come back, being it's Miami, it's the U, so I think it'll be interesting to see how the tailgating atmosphere is, how the game itself is. Like you said, a down and out Florida State team, but a game like this, you can never, who knows? This is one of those games to see an upset. So with that said, Keith, who do you have in this game?
I have Miami. Florida State, like I said, and we all know, they're limping coming into this, and Miami just being at home with the atmosphere that it supposedly is against Florida State, because that it doesn't matter how good the opposing team is. If it's a rivalry, it's a rivalry.
Yeah.
And fans are going to be pumped for that, and I think that Miami is really looking forward to humiliating Florida State in front of their home crowd. So I think that it will be Miami, quite handily in this one.
Okay. Well, let's just keep going with your predictions for the weekend, just so you two know. This past weekend, Keith, you were at 1-4. Jake,
darn it!
Yeah, we're like I said, just do the opposite of what we all say. Jake, you were at 2-3, and yours truly was at 3-2. We all, again, I think the best we've done. Let me see, Jake. Actually, the first week we all did this together was our best week. So we've just gotten worse and worse as we go. So great. It makes me feel really good about ourselves. So we got Jacksonville at Kansas City for the next game.
Ooh. Kind of be foolish to go against Pat Mahomes, yes. Right? So let's go with Kansas City.
All right. Then we got Minnesota at Philadelphia.
Minnesota. Why not? I'm going out on a limb on that one, I think, a little bit, but let's go with Minnesota.
Okay. And then we got just a random game, Arizona at San Francisco.
Arizona.
And then another kind of random game, but it's a primetime game, Washington at New Orleans.
New Orleans. Drew Brees all day.
Yes. I agree with you there. So, Keith, so you will be down in Miami this week. Where are you going the week after? I forget.
I will be from Miami. I will be heading northwest over to LSU.
That's right. Okay. Are you making it over to any West Coast games, or are you going to be in the East the whole time?
I'm not. There's with the job that I'm doing, I actually have a counterpart that's covering a different region of the country,
cool.
and
Okay.
he has the West Coast.
Gotcha.
So I am all now southeast. So I got Florida. I covering Florida quite a bit, LSU, Clemson, games like that. So I'm all in the southeast now.
Awesome. Well, Keith, I know we have the last few weeks, but for new listeners, if they're wondering where they can keep up with your adventures, can you let us know and where we can keep up with those?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my wife and I, we do our show Coffee with Keith and Katie on Public House Media as well. That's on video, and that show comes out every Sunday at 9 a.m. Central. So on the Facebook page for Public House Media, so you can check it out that way. And K&K Coffee on Twitter and Instagram. So check us out there, and you can see all of our shows and all the things that my wife and I are doing. So.
Awesome. Well, Keith, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Please be safe going down to Miami. Glad you were able to visit the Berg this past week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. As always, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. There he goes, Keith Hoehne. As always, a special thanks to him for being with us. Stay with Jake and me here in the cheap seats. When we come back, we will give you our predictions, and you know they're going to be right because, never mind, they're not going to be right. Just stick with us. And welcome way up high in the cheap seats, Matt Coyne, Jake Holmes. Just had Keith Hoehne on. I'm glad he had a good time in Pittsburgh, Jake. I'll be honest. That's kind of a proud moment for me that he had a good time there.
Yeah, same here. I'm glad that he had a good time. Pittsburgh, you know what? I know that there's listeners that are going to firmly disagree with me. Pittsburgh is the greatest city on the planet. It really is. I mean, the people are nice. It's like, and there's just such a small town vibe about it. But it's a big city. I mean, Pittsburgh's fantastic. If you've never been, go. Hit up, do the stereotypical Pittsburgh things. It's a blast. It's a good time.
Yeah, I was. My wife and I were at a game at a Pirates game a few years back against the Mets. We were sitting in left field. And these people in front of us, these four guys, they were from New York, and they turned around and they said, "Hey, we got to tell you, like, Pittsburgh is a cool city. This is the first time us four have been here. We're really impressed with it. We got to know them, got to talk to them. They said, we've just really, we were really shocked. We thought that it was just going to be kind of a hole-in-a-wall kind of place, and we were really surprised. And I'll always remember that because I feel like I've heard other people say that, but enough, talking about that. But I think it is true. I agree, and I think people who go visit, agree with that as well. But with that said, Jake, back on the predictions. We talked about it last segment with Keith. We didn't do too well last week. We 1-4 with Keith, 2-3 with you, 3-2 with me. I guess I should have said last week's games was Ohio State at Penn State. You were the only one who got that right with picking Ohio State.
I know. All right,
you're like, shut up. It's your fault that Penn State lost because you picked out. I'm just kidding. Tampa Bay at Chicago. I was the only one who got that right. Not only did I get that right, but Chicago destroyed Tampa Bay. Miami at New England. All three of us got that right because we knew New England was going to destroy them, which happened. Cleveland at Oakland. That was, wow, what a game. 45-42 in overtime. Oakland taking that game. That was a fun. Did you watch that game, Jake?
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah. It
was a fun game to watch.
That was the one I tuned into the most, definitely.
Yeah, and then Baltimore and Pittsburgh. All three of us got that wrong. All three picked Pittsburgh. So there you have it. This week, Keith already made his pick. So, Jake, I will let you start us two off with Florida State at Miami.
The U. It's going to be by a lot.
Yeah, I got to go with that too. But like we said, we always like to pick the games Keith is at just to make it fun. So let's see, Miami, and then the next game, Jacksonville at Kansas City.
This is a tough one. I'm gonna pick the Chiefs. I don't. Why not? Why not? They're playing amazing.
It's funny because I cannot stand Jalen Ramsey, and that's why I don't want to pick.
I can't either.
I don't want to pick Jacksonville, but for some reason I just have this gut feeling Jacksonville's going to win this one. Kansas City's not going to go 16-0. Patrick Mahomes is going to continue to throw for 700 yards and 15 touchdowns a game. So I'm feeling it got to end here. This is going to be his first real big defensive test that he's seen. So that's why I'm picking Jacksonville. We got Minnesota at Philadelphia.
I'm going to pick the Vikings. That one loss against the Bills, that was a super fluke, and I mean they played the Rams real tough last week. I'm going to pick Minnesota.
Yeah. I'm going with you, too. I hate to have two games where all three of us agree, but I just don't think Philadelphia – I think Philadelphia – I hope nobody in Philadelphia is going to hit me for this, but I think they played out of their league last year. I know they won the Super Bowl, and congrats to them, but I think they just got hot at the right time with Foles, and I don't think they're going to do as good as they did last year. So I'm picking Minnesota as well. So then we got Arizona at San Francisco.
Rosen's going to get his first win. I don't. Too many injuries on San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm picking Rosen on the Cards.
Yeah, and you got Garoppolo's hurt. Oh man, this would be three games that we all agree on, but I don't want to go. I'm going to go with Arizona. I'm not going to not pick them just because of that.
Yeah.
So we all picked Arizona, we all picked Minnesota, we all picked Miami in the NCAA game, and then we got Washington at New Orleans.
Man, I want to be different and pick the Redskins, but I'm picking the Saints. I think Drew Brees has it's in New Orleans. It's going to New Orleans by a touchdown.
Yeah, it is. This is going to be an interesting week because I'm going to go New Orleans too. So that means all three of us agree on 4 games. The only one we don't is Jacksonville, where you and Keith take Kansas City and I take Jacksonville. So we'll see what happens, Jake. It's going to either be you and Keith tied for the best record or me by myself again. We'll see what happens. So I'll be the lone man out here. I'm cool with that. So, well, the only thing we have left to do, Jake, is our poll question, and I would love to give you the honor of giving the poll question this week.
Yeah, I think bigger surprise. I mean, we've been talking a little bit about a lot of bit about the NFL and the surprises. What's the bigger surprise, the Steelers' failures or the Chicago Bears' success? I think that could be an interesting one because it's both two things that not a lot of people expected.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good question. So make sure you visit the Cheap Seats Facebook page to answer what's the bigger surprise, the Steelers' struggles or the Chicago Bears' successes. So that'll be interesting. I think that's a good one, Jake. I think our one last week, every week, it wasn't a shocker to us that the penalties are ruining football. I think it was pretty heavily for that. So, but Jake, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first weekend of the NHL, of course, I'll finish where we started, I guess. This weekend's going to be a really fun week in the NHL because, not a whole lot of defense is going to be played. You saw that in the Pittsburgh Washington game last night. Not a lot of defense is going to be played. Teams are going to be filling each other out on offense. It's going to be a really fun weekend of hockey. Make sure you tune into, my opinion, the best sport in the world.
Yeah. So, thank you as always for listening today. Special thanks to Keith Hoehne for joining us for the 5th week in a row. I'm glad he hasn't gotten sick of us yet, Jake. That's always fun.
Yes, it is.
So make sure you tune in on Monday with Christian and Jonathan. Wednesdays with Max and Tanner. Special thanks to Squadcast.fm for making the show possible here on the Public House Media. Again, make sure you find us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. Visit us on the phmedia.com, like us on our Facebook page. Make sure you jump on today to get the daily poll question. Don't forget, too, to check on our Cheap Seats Facebook page to join our Pick'em League. Hey, Jake, thanks again for joining us. It's been a fun show.
Oh, Matt, thank you. It didn't start out all that fun, but we as always, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
Yeah, I'm glad that part wasn't recorded. I'll say that. So, well, thank you, obviously, to all you who listen. We appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it today. Hope you have a great weekend, a great fall weekend. We'll see you next time here in the Cheap Seats.